welcome to the deep dive. So, what if the reason you completely freeze when someone says a simple hello to you in a new language has absolutely nothing to do with your vocabulary size?
Right. It's entirely neurological.
Yes, exactly. It has everything to do with this tiny catastrophic traffic jam happening right behind your forehead. Because, as lifelong learners, you and I, we tend to approach learning a language, especially English, as a problem of just data storage.
Like treating your brain like a hard drive.
Yes, we try to cram in thousands of grammar rules, irregular verbs, vocabulary lists. We just assume that if we upload enough data, fluency is going to naturally emerge.
And I mean, it is a completely logical assumption,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's a biologically flawed one, that we rely on what cognitive psychologists call declarative memory. That's a part of the brain that stores facts and figures. You memorize that apple means manzana or palm. But a conversation isn't a history test. It's a real-time, dynamic motor function mixed with, spontaneous emotional responses. When you rely on declarative memory in a live conversation, you are basically trying to read a textbook while navigating a high-speed intersection. The processing power required is just astronomical.
And that is exactly where the system breaks down. I mean, we've all been there. You step off a plane or you walk into a meeting, someone asks you a question you technically know the answer to, and your mind just goes completely blank.
Completely blank.
Yeah. So today we're tearing down the architecture of how we process language. We've got transcripts from two incredible expert guides today. One focuses on the internal shift from translating to thinking directly in English, and the other is this really practical masterclass on introducing yourself.
Which is the ultimate test, really.
Oh, for sure. So the mission for this deep dive is to give you the tools to stop translating in your head, to build these daily micro habits that wire your brain for English, and finally, craft a personal introduction that feels authentic and ready for any situation. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's look at this traffic jam. Because before we can build anything new, we got to understand why the current system feels so agonizingly slow. The source material describes this sensation as feeling like your thoughts are moving through thick mud.
Mud is the perfect word for it, yeah.
You open your mouth, but the gears are just grinding.
Well, that muddy feeling is actually a recognized phenomenon in cognitive science. It's known as dual task interference. When you try to speak English by translating from your native language, you aren't just doing one thing poorly. You are attempting two incredibly complex cognitive tasks simultaneously.
Okay, so what's the first task?
So first, your brain generates the abstract thought and maps it onto the neural pathways of your mother tongue. That's a language you've spent decades mastering. That is a massive neurological event on its own.
All right, so I think of a concept, and my brain immediately serves up the sentence in my native language because it's just the path of least resistance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But then comes the second, and honestly even heavier task. Your prefrontal cortex has to act as this real-time interpreter. It has to take that fully formed native sentence, suppress the urge to speak it out loud, search your declarative memory for the English equivalents of each word, and then assemble them.
Wow.
Yeah, you're carrying two massive cognitive loads at the exact same time. By the time you do all that, precious seconds have passed, the conversation has moved on, and you just freeze.
It reminds me of how computers run older software. Like if you try to run a program designed for a completely different operating system, you have to use an emulator. The computer has to translate the code line by line in real time before it can actually execute a command. And what happens? It drains the battery, the fan starts spinning wildly, and the whole system lags.
That is a brilliant analogy.
When we translate in our heads, we're basically running an English emulator on our native operating system. No wonder we lag.
That emulator analogy is spot on, especially when you factor in syntactic mapping. Languages don't just use different words for the same objects. They organize reality differently. They have different architectural structures. If you rely on a word-for-word emulator, the output is almost guaranteed to be structurally unsound.
Give me a specific example from the text on how that structural mismatch actually trips us up in real time.
Consider something as simple as expressing a strong preference. In many languages, the direct, structurally correct translation of liking something a lot maps perfectly to the phrase, "I very like this."
Oh, yeah, I hear that one all the time.
Right. Because if your internal emulator is working word by word, it'll pull I, then this. But natural English requires the structure, "I really like this," or "I like this very much." By the time you realize that, you've either said the unnatural phrase or you've paused for 3 awkward seconds to correct the code.
And 3 seconds in a live conversation is an absolute eternity. The other person's eyes start to glaze over, the moment passes, and then your amygdala the brain's fear center, it detects that awkwardness and triggers a stress response. Cortisol floods your system, and boom, the screen goes completely blank.
Yes, full system crash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we actually drop one of those heavy loads? How do we delete the emulator?
What's fascinating here is that the ultimate goal is to remove the native language from the process entirely. You want the English sentence to arrive directly in the mind. And the first step to doing that is shattering a really deeply held misconception.
The London myth.
Yes, the London or New York myth. There's this entrenched belief that the only way to genuinely think in a new language is through total geographic immersion. People assume they need to quit their jobs, pack up their lives, and move to an English-speaking city to force their brains to adapt.
It's that expat bubble idea.
Yeah.
We assume if the environment changes, the brain just automatically rewires itself. But, I know plenty of people who've lived in English-speaking countries for a decade and still translate every single thought in their heads because they just surround themselves with their native language community. Geography does not equal fluency.
It really doesn't. Geography provides an opportunity, sure, but it does not guarantee neuroplasticity. What actually forces the brain to adapt isn't the physical soil you stand on. It's the frequency and the quality of your interaction with the language. What is truly needed are small, intelligent steps that blend into daily life, even if English isn't the language of your streets.
Which brings us to the first practical technique from the text. And it is one of the most mechanically effective techniques I've ever encountered for bypassing that emulator.
Shadowing.
Shadowing. It sounds incredibly simple, almost too simple to work. But the neurology behind it is wild.
It really is.
Yeah.
Shadowing is essentially acting as a real-time vocal mirror, like a living echo. You find audio of a native speaker, so a podcast, an audiobook, or a video, and you repeat what you hear immediately. You're lagging just a fraction of a second behind them.
But the rules for this are incredibly strict, right? Like, they completely violate how most of us were taught to study. You do not pause the audio, you do not stop to translate a word you missed, and you absolutely do not run to a dictionary. You just keep moving.
Yes, because the academic system conditioned us to believe that comprehension is the prerequisite for speech. We're taught to read, analyze the grammar, look up the vocabulary, and only then attempt to speak. Shadowing flips that paradigm entirely. It prioritizes the motor function over analytical comprehension.
It's like learning music. You don't understand every single word of a new song at first. You hear a song on the radio, you don't know the lyrics, but you catch the rhythm, you nod your head, you start humming the tune, and slowly you're singing with confidence without needing to dissect the sheet music.
The musical analogy is perfect, because English isn't just a collection of words. It has a rhythm. It has a heartbeat. Spoken English relies heavily on prosody, which is the rhythm, stress, and intonation of speech. When you translate in your head, you naturally speak in this staccato, robotic rhythm because you're fetching one word at a time. Shadowing trains the mouth and brain to work in perfect harmony.
Let's actually walk you through the specific examples from the source so the physical sensation becomes clear. If the audio track says, "I want to speak English fluently," you don't wait for the sentence to finish. You overlap.
Exactly. The audio starts, "I want to speak," and you're immediately right behind it going, "Want to speak English fluently."
You're matching the cadence, the rise and fall of the pitch. So the audio says, "I listen to English every day."
And you immediately mirror the emphasis, "I listen to English every day."
Or shadowing helps me think and speak better.
Shadowing helps me think and speak better.
I gotta admit, the first time you try this, it feels chaotic. You will stumble, you'll miss entire phrases, and your brain is going to scream at you to hit pause so you can catch up and understand the meaning.
And that urge to pause is your internal emulator fighting for control. It wants to analyze. By refusing to pause, you starve the translation mechanism. Over time, this strengthens the neural pathways between the auditory cortex, which processes the sound, and Broca's area, which controls speech production.
Okay, so that hand is the physical production, the external sound, but what about the inner monologue? The voice in your head that's constantly narrating your life in your mother tongue. We have to rewire that, but the advice here is to start incredibly small, right? Like to avoid mental exhaustion.
Yes. You cannot start by trying to debate politics in your head in English. You'll get overwhelmed and instantly revert to your native language. You start at level 1, which is just single words. We call it semantic memory mapping. It begins the moment you wake up, you open your eyes, you look around your bedroom, and you simply name the things you see.
So just phone, table, chair, window, door.
Exactly. But there is a crucial psychological rule here. It is okay to not know a word.
Wait, really? We don't look it up?
No, you skip it. If your eyes land on a curtain and you don't know the word, do not pull out your phone to translate it. Look it up later, or just skip it entirely and look at the next object. The goal is building a natural, unforced vocabulary. If you force yourself to translate every unknown object, you immediately re-engage the emulator and introduce frustration.
Ah, I see. You're trying to keep the internal environment exclusively English. Okay, so once those static nouns become automatic, the text moves us to level 2, which is adding movement, verbs.
Right. You narrate your immediate physical actions as they happen. As you physically turn the handle, the thought is, I open the door. As you lift your glass, I drink water. I sit on the chair. You're tying the syntax of the language to the kinetic feedback of your own body.
And then level 3 is forming full thoughts and using whispers. The text says to form clean, short sentences like, the sky is blue, the air is cold, I see a dog, but why whisper them? Why not just keep it in your head?
Whispering bridges the gap between internal thought and physical speech. When a thought remains entirely internal, it's abstract. But by whispering, you force the thought to cross the threshold into physical reality. The brain registers the vibration of your vocal cords, producing the English sentence without translation. It proves to your nervous system that the English thought is real.
That is so cool, but what happens when your mind just goes blank? Like you're in the middle of a sentence and you cannot remember a specific word? The instinct is sheer panic?
This raises an important question, and the specific solution from the text is this. Do not retreat to the native language. Describe around the word.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
Let's say you forget the word calculator. Don't pull out your phone. Use the word you do have to describe it. Say, the thing I use to count numbers. Or the small machine with buttons that does math.
Oh, I love that because it mimics authentic, real-world conversational problem solving. Native speakers forget words all the time. We call things doohickeys or whatchamacallites. If you can navigate around a missing word, you aren't failing, you're surviving in the language.
Exactly. It exercises lateral thinking. You train your brain that there's never just one path to a meaning.
So we have these active techniques, but to weave English into the fabric of daily life, we need passive habits. There's this profound quote from the text that I just love. If you genuinely want to speak English with ease, do not simply study English, live with it.
Yes. Living with it versus studying it. We have to hijack the behaviors you're already performing automatically.
And the most obvious target is your phone. Habit 1 is the phone language switch. We check our phones, 50 to 100 times a day. Changing your phone's language to English turns ordinary moments into passive learning.
It's incredibly effective because user interface language is designed to be intuitive. You don't need a dictionary to know what airplane mode means because there's a picture of an airplane.
Right. You encounter words from the text like settings, airplane mode, brightness, update, delete, download, and you absorb them naturally without any memorization.
You're using opera conditioning. You want to adjust your screen light. You see the word brightness. You slide the bar. The screen gets brighter. Your brain maps the word to the action instantly.
Habit 2 is the 3-sentence diary. Tell me about this evening diary habit, because the text says it takes only 5 minutes.
It's so quick. And the key is, it doesn't require flawless grammar. Most people struggle because they memorize abstract textbook sentences that have no emotional resonance. The 3-sentence diary forces the brain to draw vocabulary from real, lived experiences.
So what's the structure?
You use simple, honest sentences about your day across different tenses. For example, today I went to work. I felt exhausted. I had 2 cups of coffee.
And that forces you to proceduralize the grammar, right? You reflect on the past with I went, state the present with I feel, without obsessing over perfection.
Exactly. If you worry about perfect grammar, you'll stop writing. Just document reality.
And habit 3 is mirroring short videos on platforms like TikTok, Reels, or Shorts. Instead of just mindlessly scrolling, you take a 20-second video on a beloved topic, travel, food, humor, and you watch it repeatedly.
And then you mirror it. You copy the speaker's tone, their rhythm, even their facial expressions. It triggers mirror neurons that make you actually feel more confident speaking.
Here's where it gets really interesting. None of these methods require extra time. The phone switch, the 5-minute diary, the TikTok mirroring, they simply transform the time you already have.
You're swapping out the linguistic infrastructure of your day.
Okay, so we've built the internal engine, we've dropped the heavy load of translation, but now we have a distinct narrative transition. Now that you have the tools to think directly in English and quiet that translating brain, how do you actually use this in the real world to connect with others?
Right. How do you externalize it when the pressure's on?
Yes, because the second source material tackles that universally common yet somehow totally intimidating prompt. Tell me about yourself.
It's a terrifying question because it's so open-ended.
It's a massive void. If you don't have a structure, your brain tries to summarize your entire existence, you panic, and you end up sounding like a robot.
To prevent that, the text introduces what we call cognitive anchors, highly structured, familiar data points you can deliver on autopilot. The text uses a dialogue between two characters, Emily and Paul, to lay out the core pillars of a basic introduction.
Let's lay those foundational pillars out. They are name and origin, living situation, age, and job. So for Paul, he's from the U.S. He lives in a small, quiet town with a house and a garden. He's 28, and he's an English teacher.
And Emily is from Canada. She lives in a busy, noisy big city in a small apartment. She's 25, and she's an art student.
Now, why are these simple, factual sentences the perfect testing ground for the direct thinking methods we talked about earlier?
Because the information is deeply known to you. You don't have to search for the concepts. You know your age. You know your job. By starting with facts you know intimately, you only have to focus on finding the English rhythm. It frees up your working memory to focus on the human interaction, like making eye contact and smiling.
It's a runway. It lets you build momentum, but just giving your name and job sounds like a resume. To make an introduction engaging, you have to add personality. You have to flesh out the persona.
Absolutely. Stating your age is sterile. You need sensory details.
The source text shows us how to do this with family dynamics. Paul doesn't just say he has a family. He shares that his younger sister Sarah is a music student who plays piano, his mother is a writer, and his father is a doctor.
And Emily mentions her older brother Tom is 29, her mother is a teacher, and her father is a chef.
Which opens up so many conversational paths. And then there is the classic conversational hook. Pets. I love this part of the text. The pet divide is so real.
It is. Paul talks about his dog Max, who is small, brown, friendly, and happy. Emily talks about her cat Luna, who is black and white, quiet, elegant, independent, and sleepy.
Look at those adjectives. When you say small, brown, friendly dog, you're painting a vivid picture. You aren't just reciting data. And this extends to favorites, too. Food, colors, hobbies.
Sharing favorites builds immediate bridges.
The specifics from the text are great. Paul loves vegetable pizza and old rock music. He plays soccer, and he likes the color blue. Emily loves pasta, reading adventure stories, painting, and the color green, like nature. Now, I gotta play devil's advocate here. Is it just about listing things you like? Like, my favorite color is blue. That seems a bit one-dimensional, doesn't it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, sharing favorites is actually an invitation. It's what sociologists call a conversational affordance. When you say you love old rock music, you aren't just giving a fact. You're handing the other person a tool to ask a follow-up question.
Oh, I see. You're hoping they ask, oh, what's your favorite band? You're creating a dialogue rather than a monologue. You're scattering breadcrumbs.
Exactly.
Which naturally leads to a surprising but highly effective strategy from the source, sharing what you don't like, the power of dislikes.
This is a highly advanced tactic.
The specifics here are funny. Paul says he doesn't like olives or waiting in long lines. Emily says she doesn't like spicy food or waking up early. Why is stating a dislike, politely of course, such a good strategy?
Because it shows confidence. It paints a much more vivid, relatable picture of your personality than just politely agreeing with everything. It initiates a vulnerability loop. When you meet someone, you're both wearing masks of hyperpoliteness. Everything is fine and nice. But when you admit a mild dislike, you drop the mask.
Because nobody likes everything. When Paul says he hates waiting in lines, the immediate internal response from the listener is, oh my gosh, me too. You instantly bond over a shared frustration. It humanizes you.
It really does.
Yeah.
But you have to tailor the message. You don't say all of this at once.
Right. Contextual calibration. The text emphasizes that you have to tailor to the room. In a classroom setting, Paul might say, my name is Paul, I'm from the U.S., and I like to learn new things. He focuses on purpose.
But in a party setting, Emily might say, hi, I'm Emily. I love to paint and listen to music. She skips the resume and goes straight for the hobbies and connection.
So, what does this all mean? By thinking directly in English, using those small daily habits like the phone switch and the diary, you can dynamically adjust your introduction in real time. You pick the right modules, the pets, the jobs, the dislikes for the specific person standing in front of you.
Because your cognitive load is low, you have the mental space to actually read the room and connect.
Exactly. So to recap our journey today,
Yeah.
You now know how to drop the heavy load of internal translation. You know how to use shadowing and daily passive habits to think directly in English. And you know how to structure a warm, customized introduction using specific likes and dislikes.
And remember, telling about yourself is not a scary test of grammar. It is simply an invitation to share a little bit of who you are.
It really is a shift in perspective. And I
Mhm.
want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own. It's related to a concept called the Horphian hypothesis, the idea that language fundamentally shapes how we express ourselves. Now that you are learning to think directly in English without translating your native thoughts, does introducing yourself in this new language give you the freedom to highlight a slightly different, perhaps more confident version of your own personality? If you're not constrained by the baggage of your native tongue, who do you choose to be? Think about that. Keep shadowing, keep living in the language, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.